Welcome for those of you joining us to learn how to create our code for Lab 12. You are joining us live in class, actually. It's a really crowded class. I wish you could see how many people are here with us. Probably hear how rowdy they are in the background. We are going to create this lab together. But as usual with many labs, I've done this many times where I show you first how it looks when you run it. So the goal of this lab is to run the lab, and you don't have any code yet, so you'll just have to watch the screen right now. It's to open it up, open the program that we're going to create, run it, it's thinking about it, and immediately this box is going to pop up on the screen. Boom, there it is, okay? And it's automatically set to look in the folder. Now, the one that we're actually running right now is when I was practicing for this class, so I called it Practice for Class. And I would click on my SRC folder, my source folder, my main, Java, and I can only open a text file with this program because the whole point of Lab 12 is to be able to open files. So we are going to pick a file that is a text file. Now I have a few created in here. I'm just going to grab this Our Father one. You can see that it reads out the file line by line, and then it tells me the total number of lines, the total number of words, and it also counts the characters. That's what Lab 12 wants you to do. Write a code that'll open a text file, read the number of lines, read the number of words, read the number of characters, and tell the user how many there are. You're basically kind of doing something that Microsoft Word does. You can open up a file in Microsoft Word, and at the very bottom it tells you, you've got this many words. Well, because somebody wrote a computer program that does that. So that's what we are going to do together. Any questions so far? Feeling pretty good about that? All right. So let's go in and create a new project. Java with Maven, Java application. And we're going to call this, is it called FileAway maybe? I forget what he called it. Yeah, I think he calls it FileAway. Let's call it FileAway. And we'll say finish. And then immediately in this FileAway, we need to create a new Java main class. And we'll call that FileAway as well. That's our main class. Now, we actually don't need the safe input, but because I told you we worked so hard making that, I'm going to go ahead and put it in here anyway. Like maybe I'd want to use it for something, so I'm just going to get in the habit of always going and right-clicking on safe input, copy. I'm just getting this out of good old Get Methodical, which was Lab 8. Then I right-click on source package and say paste, refactor, copy. And then it is there. Now, we can also right-click on this and create a new empty file. Do you guys see empty file in your list? If you don't see empty file, you can click on other to find it. We're just trying to find this empty file in our list. Are you guys able to find it? No, it's not listed. I forget where oh, right here. If you click on other, then click on empty file. It was a quick way that I found that I could create some words because we want something to read, right? Like, what am I going to read if I don't have any files to read? So I just created one just before called the Our Father. I think I'll make a new one. I love my prayers. I'll call it Serenity Prayer. And you can make it whatever you want. It could be Mary Had a Little Lamb. It could be your autobiography, whatever you want. So I'm going to just type this out. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. All right. So there I've created a little blank text file that I can go back and read. because I'm going to want something to read, right? I'm going to want something that I can open up and read. I have lots of files on my computer that are text files, but now I've got one specific for this. So I'm going back into my FileAway. I'm going to clean it up a bit like we do all of these, adding my email, cleaning up my curly braces so that they make sense and they're all lined up nicely. All right, first things first, we have to start declaring some variables. Now, since we are reading a file, which is complicated but far more practical and useful than what we've been reading so far up to this point, we want a JFile chooser. You know how we've had int, double, string, boolean. Well, now we have JFile chooser. We got to call it something. Let's just be real creative here and call it chooser. And I'm going to call it new JFile chooser. Just like that. Okay. Notice we've got some red appearing here. If I right click here, it says I need to add the import. Yes, you do. Just trust it. Just like when we add a scanner to our previous codes, you have to add all these other things as well. Okay. We're also going to need scanner in. Remember that one? Usually at this point, I would also say the new scanner system, but I'm not going to go to all that trouble. I'm just going to say scanner in right now. And in a moment, it'll make sense why. Basically, I'm going to declare it, but I'm not going to initialize it. I'm just going to declare it. I'm going to need a scanner. Okay. And again, since I've added a scanner, I have to add the import for java.util.scanner. I'm also going to need a string for each line because I'm going to read it line by line. So I'm going to be referencing the line, and these lines are strings. Every line of the Serenity Prayer is a string. And then I'm also going to need some files. So remember, we have int, double, string, boolean, scanner. Now we also have this object called a file. So file, I'm going to select a file. So I'm going to just call it selected file. Do you remember when that box opened up and I clicked on a file? That was my selected file. It was kind of like saying, enter your first name, and you typed in Beth. Now it's saying, choose a file, and you click on a file. That's what I'm trying to draw similarities to stuff that was making sense so far. Okay, again, we have a problem because we need to import java.io.file. Once I do that, it's fine. I also need a file for my working directory because I'm going to tell it which directory to look in, which files to look in. I don't want to just looking all over my computer. I want to tell it kind of specifically where to look for a file. And then, if you recall from the lab asks you to tell us how many words there are, how many lines there are, how many characters there are. So those are just basic ints, good old ints. We're going to have an int for line count. We're going to have an int for word count. We're going to have an int for character count. We're going to need all those things. I don't know why I have a space there because these are all variables. I really could keep them together. All right, any questions so far? Is that feeling okay so far? So good? All right, so now we're ready to write code that's going to open a file and read it. We've written code so far where we read the user input and do something with it. So it's going to be similar to that, but with a file, you're going to have a try block that looks something like this, and right after the try block, you're going to have a catch block. Let's see. And we need to get these curly braces where they're supposed to. I don't know why sometimes they go into the wrong spot, but they do. Here we go. Okay. Now notice I've got some red errors coming up. That's because I don't have certain things done yet, okay? I need to finish these out. Basically, we're going to try to open a file, and assuming that things go well, we'll be done. But if they don't go well, we need to catch the error. So that's why we have, it's kind of like if else. If things go well when you read this, great. Else, you're going to tell the user that's not cool. That's kind of what try catch means when we're opening a file. So this catch block, we need a catch block that's going to catch the file not found exception. And you've probably seen that happen as you've used computers over the years. File not found. I think they even make cute little funny t-shirts with that on and everything. Okay, so we need file not found, and the text that goes with that is a SALT tab. File not found error. Now, a lot of what we've done so far is what Professor Wolf does in video 08C. We're just trying to do it in a slightly different order that might be a little more logical. And I'm trying to draw those parallels to our prior knowledge as well. All right. Right now, it's saying cannot find symbol. I'm going to let it go for right now because sometimes when you code your catch stuff too soon, it's dependent upon what I put in this try block. So we'll come back to that red error. If it's still there after we code the try block, we'll address it. But I think it's going to probably get taken care of all on its own. Okay, so back in the try block, we're ready to actually open this file and read it. So the first thing we need to do is set the directory. So the working directory, that's the directory we're going to look in. And the code that you type, and this is just code that you kind of have to memorize to be able to use it, is new file system.get. Sometimes it pops open, but it's not doing that for me today, so I'm just going to have to type it completely. And I'm looking in the user.directory. All right. From here, I'm going to set the directory to this directory. Chooser set, oh, see it's popping up. Set current directory is what I want. There it is, right here. Set current directory, and I want to set the current directory to what I just called working directory. So if I wanted to do this all in one line, I could have done chooser.setCurrentDirectory. Instead of writing working directory here, I could have typed what it equals, all of this. I'm just kind of doing it in two lines. First, I'm saying what the working directory is, and then I'm saying I want to use that, okay, in two separate lines. All right, I'm going to pause for a moment, see if our live audience has any questions so far. Feeling good so far? Okay. All right. So we open this up, we pick our directory, and what does the user do? They select a file. So we say what they've selected. The file they've selected is whatever they've chosen. So chooser.get selected file. They've chosen a file. Yay, good job, user. You picked a file to read. All right. Then we use our scanner to actually read it. Now, notice this part might look a little familiar here. New scanner. Now, usually we write system.in. Do you remember? I mean, we've used scanner like a million times this year so far. We write scanner in equals new scanner system.in. That's what we've been writing all along. But we're not just going to use system.in this time. We're going to use the selected file. So whatever file they read, that's what we're going to use the scanner to read. Okay. So we're actually initializing it down here in the code instead of doing it up here on line 19. We're kind of finishing. Remember how at the beginning I said, we'll come back to that in a minute. We want to initialize it after they've actually picked the file. If I initialize it at the top, I would probably, I mean, it will probably still work. We'd just be replacing it, but there's no need to initialize it basically. Okay, so I didn't initialize it. We left it blank. Okay, so we open it up and we read it. How do we read it? One line at a time, just like we read, right? We don't read the whole page at once. We go through and we read a line, and then we read the next line, and we read the next line. How many lines? However many there are, right? So I can't do a for loop. If I knew there were going to be 5 lines, I could write a for loop, like read every line from 0 to 4. 5 lines. I don't know how many lines there are in my file. When you don't know how many there are, we use the good old while loop. So while in dot has next line. While there's a next line, we're going to keep on doing all of this stuff. So the first thing we're going to do is read a line and store it in line. Okay, so remember that variable we called at the very beginning, line, in dot next line. Now this might be similar to another file where we would say last name equals in dot next line, because the user would input it. Now we're just doing it with each line of the file, in dot next line. The lab doesn't ask us to do this, but in video 08C, he shows us how to print out each line. To print out each line, it's just a Alt tab, and you literally print out each line. So you write Alt tab, println, line. You could leave this out of your code if you want, because it doesn't ask you to do that. But I think it's kind of nice to be able to read the text and then literally be able to see, like, yep, there's 6 lines, yep, there's 58 characters, or whatever it is, you know. It's kind of neat to be able to see the actual passage. So leaving that in is totally fine with me. Okay, now we're also going to need to count the lines, right? Any ideas on that? The line count is going to keep going up by 1 every time we go through the loop. What do you think? Plus, perfect. Thank you, Julia. She told us it's line plus plus, line count plus plus. Perfect. That's great. There's a problem though, and I did this on purpose because sometimes it's like, when do you know to initialize, when don't you? What do we do? If you look, it's red right now because we have a small problem. It says it might not have been initialized. It's like, okay, I'll start counting, but where should I start? Should I start at 5? Should I start at 12? Should I start at 0? Where do you want me to start? I'm going to keep counting, but where should I start? So we do need to initialize line count to 0 because we want to start at 0 and count up from there. All right, the next thing we need after a line count, character count. Character count. Okay, well, think about this. In a line of words, the number of characters is the number of spaces, or it's basically the length of the line, right? So we've done this in the arrays a little bit, where we look at the length of something. It has to compare to the length of the line. But we need something in between. So the length of a line, after we go through each line, we'll know the line length. And then we go through the next one, and we know the line length. And we go through the next one, and we have the line length. So it's not going to just be car count plus plus. This is where we want to do plus equals. That's going to tell us the total number of characters. Car count plus equals the length of the line. And it just keeps adding to it every line you go through. The first line might have 20 characters. The next line might have 40 characters. So now we're up to 60 and so on. And it just keeps adding and adding and adding. The word count is hands down the hardest. Oh, by the way, why do I have an error right here showing up on car count? Yep, we didn't initialize that one either. So up here at the top, let's initialize it. Oh, fun fact, guess what else we probably should initialize right now? The word count, right? Because we're counting, and it's like, where do you want me to start counting? If I pad these numbers if I were to put like 100 for each of these, it's going to shift all my answers that the output window. It would, instead of being 65 words, it would be 165 words. It doesn't understand that it should just start at 0. Okay, so there is our line count, character count, but we also need a word count. Word count is going to be basically the length of how many words. Like, it gets kind of tricky, doesn't it? Like, how do you define a word in computer programming? Well, if we think back to the arrays that we did and create an array of words where each word gets put into an array list. So think, how did we do arrays in lab, I think what came right before this, lab 11? We would have had a string of, like an array of, what am I trying to say? Let me stop typing and then I'll talk. That is an array of a bunch of strings, a bunch of words. Words are strings. So if I create this array that's a string array, I know it's a string array because of these brackets right here. And I named it words just because I didn't know what else to name it. Each thing that goes into this array is going to be a word. Now, how do I do that? Well, that's where the funny code comes in. It's called line.split. And how do I split the words up? With a space. Okay, so I'm going to take the line, I'm going to split it up every time I see a space. And then that string that comes before it is an element in my array of strings. Okay, in my array of words. So now, if I want to know how many words there are, how did we figure out how long data points was, or how many numbers were in data points? Do you guys remember how we did that? If we want to know how many elements are in an array, remember? Yes, in an array, this is going to be an array list, so we just do the length again. Exactly. So plus equals words dot length. So we have this array, we don't know how many words are in it, but the computer does, and then it just tells you the word count, which is the same as the number of items in the array. That's how many words there are. Okay. So what's the problem on this line? Oh, what did I forget? Semicolon. Gotta have a semicolon there. All right. We're doing great. We're done with this. We've gone through the whole thing. We've counted words. We've counted characters. We've counted lines. We're done with it. So when you're done with something, sometimes it's nice to have an extra line here for the output. You need to close it. When you're done with a file, you close the file. You have to remember to do that in your try block. You've opened the file, you close the file. And now we're ready to tell the user how many of all of this there is. I'll do one for you right here. Total lines is line count. And then I need you guys to do, for the rest of this lab, the total words and total characters. I'm going to leave that for you, just so that you can say, I did some of this all on my very own, without watching this helpful video. Okay, so you can do those. You can do them right now if you know what the answer is. That's fine. Okay? All right, so we have one small problem here. This code right now is written for this really nice user. You said, hey user, pick a file. And the user was like, sure thing, let me go do that. Not every user is so nice, are they? Some users say, I don't want to pick a file. I'm not going to, okay? If that happens, we need to be prepared for that. So right now, we were assuming that all of this was going to happen and everything was great. If they open a file, it is great. Else, not so great. So we need to create an if-else block here, because this only works right now if they pick a file. And if they don't, the whole thing breaks. So I'm going to highlight all of this, tab it in. Right up here at the top, I'm going to add my if block. If chooser dot show open dot, see, it starts to pop right up, this code that's already built into NetBeans. I'm going to click on it. Show open dialog null. It's just what you put. Equals J file chooser. That's the name of the thing that was doing our opening for us. Approve option. The way I like to think of that is if the user chose a file and we approve it, like, yep, that's a good file to choose, then all of this code will happen. Put a curly brace in there and end with a curly brace. I'll give you a moment to get that typed in because I know it's a lot to type. If chooser.showOpen dialog null equals jFileChooser.approve option. Now we have to do the else. Else they don't do that. They're being very stubborn and they don't choose a file for us. Shame on them. What's going to happen? Well, we're going to tell them, sorry, you must select a file. Terminating. If you're not going to select a file, I'm not going to do this, and then good old system.exit with a big old 0 in the middle. Okay. Looking down here into our catch block, I notice that it's still frustrated here. If I click on this, it's because I need to add another import that I haven't done yet. So if you still have a red error happening on that line, go ahead and click on it and add the import, and then it'll work. All those imports are getting added up here at the top. So now this will work. Now notice at this point, mine's only going to give me a line count. It's not going to give me a word count or a character count because that's the part I've left for you to code. But if I run this, it will do everything else. All right. Any questions? Told you it would probably be under 30. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead. Huh, it wouldn't let you add file. The actual thing is this line right here. Is that somewhere up at the top of your code? java.io.filenotfound exception? Okay, I'll come take a look at it. Julia, did you have a question too? Oh, okay. Null, N-U-L-L. All right, so if you do this and then execute your code, I will go ahead and run it real quick and you'll be able to see what it does. Again, mine will only show the line count. It will print out each line of the file I select. And I could select a different file every time I run this. Taking plenty long. Okay, FileAway. See, I'm in my project file. I could also go into a different directory. You can see all your directories up here, but I'll stay in FileAway right now. Source file, main file, Java file, and I'm going to read the Serenity Prayer. So I pick this and I say open, and it's reading it out. It tells me there are 3 lines. Your final code will also tell me the word count and the character count. Because we've coded it to do that, you just have to print it out in your code.